I've gotten more comfortable with the visibility of launching and also about the kind of content that I want to share. But what continued to break my brain was launch timing. What is the best time to launch? What about holidays and school vacations? And is the beginning of the year good, or maybe September? Or are they bad because everyone's launching? The solution I landed on might surprise you, and I'll talk you through it today, as well as the nitty-gritty of the launch that I'm currently in. My name is Astrid, and today I'll share more about how I launch gently in my business. And I want to talk about launch timing, about kind of the length and the format of the launch, a little bit of how I prep for launches, and then how I'm feeling. So let's grab a cup of tea or coffee or anything that you feel like drinking and dive in. So I've got my notes here to the left because my brain is a little bit fuzzy today, but I wanted to talk to you anyway. So launch timing, as I said, this used to break my brain because I kept overthinking when the right moment was. As I said, I didn't want to launch at a moment when most people would be away on vacation or when there were like major holidays. But my audience is really international. So there's really no perfect time in that sense. And the thing that I always tell my clients, that I told myself as well, there is no best or perfect time to launch. And the best time needs to work for you. But with my marketing program Grow, there was an extra complication because it would run for 4 months. I'd had 4 months cohorts. So as well as making the launch fit for me, I felt like I had to make those 4 months fit for me as well and work around my own times that I want to take time off or that I want to take vacation and other kind of events in my business. So that complicated things a lot. Now, you might have guessed it. The solution was actually not so much in the timing of the launch. It was in kind of repurposing or rejigging, rather, the Grow program. So what I started doing a couple of months ago is, rather than think in terms of 4 months cohorts, I've now got a sort of like always there concept. So that means people had gotten lifetime access anyway to all the materials, but now I also added lifetime access to the planning calls and the monthly office hours. So this way I was no longer thinking in terms of a cohort of a group of people that got more support during these 4 months, but I've just extended that support for everyone into the future as long as I run this program. And this might sound like more work for me, but I'm doing the office hours anyway. I'm doing the planning calls anyway. And this just freed up so much space in my brain and made the whole launching thing truly something that I could decide for myself. Now, the previous launch in spring, March-ish, was quite a slow launch. I mean, launches always vary, but this one was really slow. And one of the reasons that I kind of felt might have caused that was that this launch was quite close to the launch before that in the autumn. And I was launching to my entire newsletter list, so I figured there might be a little bit of audience fatigue as well. And of course, there's so many reasons why launches can be slower, and the majority of them have nothing to do with us, so I won't go into them. But that kind of got me thinking about experimenting with something that I've seen other people do, and that is a waitlist-only launch. So the people that are interested in Grow, they sign up to the waitlist. Obviously, I've prompted them about that with some emails, in this case in June, and I've got some lead magnets. So they sign up for that, and then I launch just to the waitlist. On the one hand, this clashes with a belief I have that we need to take up space. And I think particularly as small business owners who've been raised female, we're not taught to take up space. And I thought, is this a way in which I'm kind of shrinking rather than taking up space? I don't have an answer to that. What I do know is that launching to the waitlist feels more intimate and more purposeful for me. And I think it would also make the entire list less fatigued. And of course, as I said, I'm still mentioning Grow explicitly. I did a couple of emails in June that were really explicitly tied into Grow to give people the chance to sign up. Another thing that I think is a real benefit of centering the waitlist is that I get to grow it throughout the year, also when I'm not in like pre-launch or launch mode, because I've got a couple of things that are evergreen, like blog posts and Pinterest pins that point to the waitlist for Grow, and particularly they tie in with 2 lead magnets that I created for Grow. So it's kind of like an evergreen machine that keeps bringing people to my waitlist and that keeps bringing them into like this intimate circle of people that are interested in Grow. And I love that. If you've been here for more than one video, you probably know that I love evergreen marketing, and I love how this keeps going even when I'm not doing anything. Currently, the waitlist is about 160 people. So this time I didn't grow it quite as much as I did during previous launches. And one thing that's on my list is definitely to make sure that it keeps on growing, right? So to really pay attention to that evergreen marketing. So another thing that I'm experimenting with is making the launch a week only. And I've gone through various iterations of launches. I think the first time I launched Grow, I had a launch period of about 5 weeks and then 3 weeks of pre-launch. So I spent, I think, about 8 weeks talking to my newsletter list about the launch. And I don't know what it was like for them, but it was exhausting for me. So I've been kind of shortening the launches ever since. And I figured the waitlist is already like warmer, if you want to call it that, and closer to buying this product. So I figured a week and an email every day. And I did kind of flag last week. So this is launch week as I'm recording. Last week, I told them, the launch is coming. This is what you can expect. And whenever someone signs up for the Grow waitlist, they get a short sequence and that kind of explains more about Grow, about how Grow differs from like one-to-one mentoring, for instance, which is a question that I often get. So people should be as informed and warm as possible before the launch itself even starts. And then because they've chosen so explicitly, I felt okay with doing an email every day, even though, yes, that's a lot, but it's a contained period of time. Now, I want to walk you through what the launch looks like by walking you through exactly what I do. So I'll be looking at my laptop. I'll be sharing this with you as well. So I plan out everything for my launches, and I do that quite a bit in advance. And I think that is one of the reasons why I'm able to do fairly gentle launches, because I've got quite a long runway. I don't do well with lots of pressure and short deadlines. So what I've done, this is what you're looking at right now, is a page from Notion. And I started, the now was around June 3rd, I think, when I made this. So this includes everything from like checking if the trailer needs to be re-recorded to updating the sequence. And then here I started doing stuff for my blog, right? So one of the things that I love about Notion is that I can really create, like, they don't call it categories, I think, but I'll call it categories. Over here, like what happens where and what the status is. So repurposing blog posts, adding more pins. I turned an older post into a blog post. And then I also looked at, okay, so which regular newsletters, so that's here, the Substack category, which regular newsletters can I explicitly or more gently tie in with the launch? So lots of stuff around pinning, the previous YouTube video, and then the like explicit more waitlist stuff, waitlist building stuff. So this is the lead magnet, the quiz. It's fairly simple, I guess. These are all the posts. There's a couple that I still need to do at this point. But this really helps me to keep an overview. Now, one of the things that I did this time, and I've done more often, is write a guest post. I wrote a guest post for Sarah's blog of Sarah and Maud. And this is one of the most enjoyable ways, I think, of kind of growing my audience, but particularly also of fostering community. And that is both in terms of potential clients and customers, but also a community of like-minded business owners to kind of feel less isolated. I think many of us do. So guest posts is something that I try to do more for this kind of stuff as well. Now, all of this that you've been looking at, of course, depends on capacity and energy. And I had more capacity and energy this launch. That's also why I created a new lead magnet. But in theory, I could scale this down even further, and I have. So as I said, what I do for a launch depends on capacity, depends on energy, and I asked myself those 3 questions that I asked in the previous video. If you haven't seen it, I talked about how can I use existing content, how can I use existing channels, and how can I, if I have the capacity, do something new. So those are 3 kind of core questions, and what I just showed you flows out of that. Now let's turn to the final part, taking care of myself during the launch. As I said at the beginning, I no longer feel quite as uncomfortable or stretched with the whole visibility part. And I know what I'm doing, but I still, if I'm honest, it still feels scary. Like my emotions fluctuate. It varies wildly. I feel nervous and apprehensive, and I also feel calm. And there's very little I can do at this point other than keep on sending the emails. And I think one of the things that we do, particularly when we're early on in our business or we're early on in like launching, if we don't get a sale on the first day or the first 2 days, we might stop. But I've learned that every launch is different. I've had launches where I made the majority of sales in the first 72 hours. And I've had launches where people really wait until the end of the week. And this is not a small investment, right? This is a very high touch program. It really includes everything I know about marketing. It's very personalized in terms of guiding participants to create their perfect strategy. So this is not, a €5 thing that you easily drop money on. One thing that at this point is starting to feel better, but I wasn't quite pleased with it, is that I hadn't finished all emails before the launch week. And in reality, I never finish all of them before launching, but because it's just 1 week, I think it feels like a little bit more pressure. But I've got 3 to go, and that's fine. The silly thing I think I did this time is that even though I have content, I have 3 or 4 launches worth of emails that I can repurpose. I had a couple of new ideas this time that I wanted to play with, which is fun, but also needs more work. And I think the main way in which I'm looking out for myself during this week is really keep in mind, okay, I need to prioritize like the good things I do to take care of myself more, which means stepping out into the garden, looking at the plants and the bees, taking a deep breath, remembering that there's more in the world than this launch, really being intentional about the breaks that I take, really sitting down and reading, because when I'm nervous or stressed, I sometimes get that feeling of wanting to do more and maybe being a little bit sloppy with my breaks. I'll also work in shorter blocks of time if I feel antsy. So rather than doing like my regular 30-minute blocks, I'll do 20-minute blocks and then have a break. Knitting, keeping up with all the lovely knitting projects. And I've got something special planned for myself for Thursday that I might tell you about in the future, but it really feels like a big kind of self-care moment for myself. All right, so if you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear what you thought of it. Do leave a comment. I'll definitely reply. And if you're interested in kind of my marketing philosophy, I'll pop some resources, the marketing struggles quiz, and my new lead magnet on doing a marketing audit. I'll pop them in the description, as well as links to obviously Grow. If you're watching this the day it is released, you can still join Grow until the end of this week. And otherwise, please do join the waitlist to be notified when it launches again. I hope you have a really good rest of your week, and I'll see you soon.